All the materials you need to make a holographic microscope. At the heart of it we have a Raspberry Pi Zero and a camera. And for the Raspberry Pi you need a SD card. And we're going to use a red laser as our light source, and it will need a resistor and some wire to wire it to the power on the Raspberry Pi. And you'll need a light-proof cup to put the laser in, and a box to house it all. And the cup will go on top with the laser on top. Then we have a hinge, which lets you open and close the laser light source, so you can put samples on a piece of glass. And this is the only thing you have to be really careful to keep clean. The underside of this glass, once you assemble it, you won't be able to get to it to clean it. What's going to happen is we're going to glue this to the what I'll call the sample holder. This is basically a credit card stock. I just made a 3/4 inch hole. And we're going to remove the lens, because this is a lensless microscope, and we're going to put that underneath it. Okay. And then we have 4 screws. These are M2.5, which are small enough to fit the mounting holes of the Raspberry Pi. And we're going to mount that to the bottom of the box. And actually we're going to make the box upside down. So what you think, this is, to open it, you just got to put your finger in these little notches. So I'm going to consider this the bottom and this the top. So what we're going to do is mount the Raspberry Pi in the center here, and we're going to drill the 4 holes and put the screws underneath and the nuts on top. And then I have a little piece of vinyl tubing which is big enough, big enough for this bolt to fit through. We're going to make little washers out of it, and we'll get to that. Just so when we tighten this, we'll have something to push against. So I think that's all the components, and we have silicone sealer. You'll need black in order to seal the top, and you'll also use it to seal this glass disc. This glass disc is 1 inch in diameter, 25 millimeters, and the hole I punched is 3/4 of an inch. So you have a little bit of overlap, and you're going to glue all that. This is to protect the circuitry so no water can go into the box. And I made the box upside down for 2 reasons. One, it's easier to mount these screws if it's this way. Also, now the edges are waterproof, so if you do have a little splashing, it won't seep in here. But mind you, you don't want to splash a lot, because it could, well, there's a lip here, so it'll protect it a little too. But we're going to have to actually open a slit here to get all these connectors. So yeah, the whole thing isn't waterproof. Just the upstairs here will be waterproof. Okay, so that's all the parts. So now let me show you the tools we need. For tools we need wire strippers, which also have a cutter on the bottom. We need a drill, a 3/4 inch drill. I like to use this. This is called a step bit. And what we'll use it for is to drill a hole in the box. And this is nice because it keeps on successively getting larger and larger. And the last notch on this is 3/4 of an inch. We'll also need a number 4 drill bit and a drill to go with it. That's to drill the hole in the top of the cup, which we're going to put the laser in. And it's best to drill it from the back, because you're going to get burrs, which are little pieces of extra plastic. And if you drill it from the back side, the burrs will come out on top, And you will cut them with an X-Acto blade. You'll just, let's see, I have one cut over here. So you can run this on the top to clean it. We'll deal with that. So you need an X-Acto blade. And let's see, a hot glue gun to mount the wires down. And that's it. Let's work on the laser. We need another tool I forgot, which was a soldering iron and some solder, because we're going to wire this up. So the first thing is this laser, it has a lens in it which concentrates the laser light, collimates it, but it turns out it's way too bright because we're going to be shining it right on the image chip. So we're going to take the lens off, and to do that, hold the base of the laser in one hand, pinch it, and then with the other you want to twist this cap. And it has a little bit of glue, so it'll be a little hard to start, but once you break the glue, then it'll just unscrew. It's threaded. So, and you'll notice it'll pop up because there's a spring. So the lens is back here. You can keep this for another experiment someday. And the spring too, why not? And now you have the body of the laser. And so what we want to do now is drill a hole in the center with our number 4 bit. And I'll drill that and be back in a second. Okay, I drilled this. I wasn't so careful to get it exactly centered, but it turns out that's okay. Do your best. So now we have this, and there's not too much burrs. I'm just going to take my X-Acto, hold it on a diagonal, and rotate it just to clean up the edges. And remember, I drilled from the back, so all the burrs are on the top. So that's pretty good. So now this guy is threaded, and what we're going to do is kind of hold this firmly. Don't pull the wires. Hold it by the base. And we're going to tilt it and push. And what you want to do is catch the threads on the plastic. And once you do, twist it in and keep on twisting it until it's flush, that all the sides are touching the plastic. Okay? And let's see. So now what we want to do is we want to line it up. And if you did it off center like me, well, lay the wire along the longest path, because what we want to do is we want to what's called strain relief. These wires are very fragile. You can pull them out really easy. So I love blue tape. So here's a little bit of blue tape. It's going to hold it down for a second while I hot glue it in place. So I'm going to push the wires down. I'm going to try and make that angle, and now the wires are nice and straight. Neatness counts. Okay, now I'm going to put it right at the edge, so this will hold it in place temporarily. Okay, good. Let me just bunch them together. Okay, beautiful. And now I'm going to put some hot glue just along the bottom. Okay. Now on the top, light can get through because there's some holes in here, which you don't want. You want this opaque. So we're going to take a blob. Once we're done with this, we're going to take a blob of black silicone sealer and put it all along the top to block all the light from coming in. But we're going to do that last because it takes 24 hours to dry. So we're just going to give this, while this is drying the hot glue. So here's our wire. So I have about a foot of it. I already stripped one end, so let me show you how I strip this. I use diagonal cutters, or you could use your X-Acto since you have one. Just separate the two wires. And then you want to strip about a 1/4 inch of the insulation away. oops, I cut some of the wires. That's not good. I'm going to do it again. Okay, very nice. And this isn't necessary, but these sure come in handy. This is, I think they call it extra hands or something like that. They're little alligator clips. So I'm going to put this up here. So to make life easy, you want to tin the wires. That means you want to put solder on it. So I'm going to take my soldering iron, and what I'm going to do first is clean the tip on a sponge with water. And then I put a little solder on the tip, just a little, and now I touch that to the wire and add a tiny bit more solder. And do the same again, touch it, put a little bit on. That's called tinning the wires. It makes soldering a lot easier. Okay, so now this is called shrink tubing. You want tubing that's a little larger than your wire. I'm going to cut this into 2 pieces. And what we want to do, now this is dry. See, now it's strain relieved. If I pull on these wires, it won't separate from the circuit board. Okay, strain relieved. So I'm going to put this here, and these wires are already tinned. So what I want to do is hook the 2 wires together so I can get it into the box. So the thing sometimes I forget to do, you got to put the shrink tubing on first before you solder it together. Okay, so put the shrink on both tubes, on both wires, and I'm going to get it close. Let's put it down here. And I'm going to use my finger to hold it while, I mean, you could get it all lined up. Oh, so we should get colors right together. So we got blue to blue. That sounds good. There we go. They're all lined up. And what's really important about soldering is, you know the iron's hot. You don't want to just feed solder in the iron. You want to make sure that the junction you're soldering is hot. So I'm going to just put a little to wet it, put the iron below it and hold it, and then feed some on the top. And make sure it's all around. I'm going to hold it in place. Wait till it hardens. Yippee! Okay. Then I'm going to move the shrink over. Okay. And we're going to do the other side. When I noticed the shrink was a little too close to the wire and it started shrinking. What happens with shrink tubing is when you heat it up, it shrinks. Okay, so we got the other wire here. It's going to be the green wire. And we're going to line it up. And boop, boop, boop. All right, beautiful. See, these are really handy. Okay, handy hands. All right, again, we wet the tip with a little bit of solder, go underneath, touch it, and then add solder. I'm just going to keep the wire there. Beautiful. Let it harden. Good. Now we slide this up. Okay, so now you have 2 choices. Usually I use a cigarette lighter, but I don't have mine here. So we're going to clean the tip because you don't want to get solder on it. And I'm going to use the barrel, which is still hot enough, and just touch it, draw it on it, do the other side. I'm going to get the junction where the tip meets the barrel. There's a nice groove in there. I'm going to ride the shrink tubing on that groove. Okay. And that is now tight. And what it does is it prevents the wires from touching and shorting. Okay. And let's see, I guess I can finish. Well, I'm going to leave this, we're going to tack this down later once I get the hinge on. So that's it. So now we have a laser mounted in the cup.